The faint scent of sandalwood clung to the air in Mr. Wei's office, a subtle yet persistent reminder of his power. Sunlight, filtered through the blinds, cast long stripes across the plush carpet, momentarily blinding Jai as she entered. Her hand, clutching a crisp white garment bag, trembled almost imperceptibly. It wasn't the sandalwood, not the light, but the weight of the unspoken secret nestled within the bag that made her breath catch in her throat. Inside, neatly folded, lay not the pristine, perfectly pressed shirt Mr. Wei expected, but a testament to her double life, a slightly wrinkled shirt. A wrinkle that spoke of rushed mornings, of stolen moments between two worlds. Mr. Wei, seated behind his imposing mahogany desk, barely glanced up as she entered. His attention was fixed on the intricate dance of stock prices flickering across his computer screen, a world where fortunes were made and lost with the tap of a key. Jai placed the garment bag on the corner of his desk, the soft thud echoing in the otherwise silent office. A tiny ripple of unease spread through her, a premonition of the storm brewing beneath the veneer of calm. Just a wrinkle, she told herself, he won't even notice. But the way Mr. Wei's gaze finally lifted, slow and deliberate, told a different story. He picked up the bag, his fingers lingering on the telltale crease. "Shirt is all wrinkled," he observed, his voice devoid of any discernible emotion. Yet, Jai felt a chill run down her spine. Mr. Wei's pronouncements, however bland, carried the weight of unspoken expectations, of a social order where every detail mattered. She forced a smile, a practiced curve of her lips that hid the frantic beating of her heart. The iron wasn't working properly this morning, Mr. Wei," she stammered, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. The iron worked perfectly fine. The shirt, however, had been hastily pressed between calls, a desperate attempt to balance her increasingly precarious existence. He raised an eyebrow, a silent question hanging in the air. Jai's internal monologue raced. He suspects. He knows. He's just waiting for me to break. The silence stretched, each tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. Mr. Wei's gaze, sharp and perceptive, seemed to bore into her, dissecting her carefully constructed facade. "What do you do all day at home?" The seemingly innocuous question felt like an accusation. "The usual, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "The usual." The phrase echoed in her mind, hollow and inadequate. The usual no longer existed. Her days were now a frantic juggling act, managing Mr. Wei's demanding schedule, maintaining the pretense of a dutiful wife, and carving out stolen hours for her new job, a secret venture that fueled her ambition and gnawed at her conscience. The exhaustion was a constant companion, a dull ache that settled deep in her bones. She longed to confide in someone, to share the burden of her secret, but the fear of judgment, the fear of shattering the fragile peace she had painstakingly constructed, held her captive. The upcoming business collaboration with Ponzi hung heavy in the air, a constant topic of conversation among the staff. Michelle, Linu, David, Tanji, Jay, their names swirled in a vortex of meeting schedules, catering arrangements, and seating charts. Mr. Wei's choice of her, Jai, as his female partner, for the reception had sent shockwaves through the office. Whispers followed her down the hallways, a mixture of envy and speculation. Why her? They wondered. What does she have that we don't? Jai knew the answer. It wasn't competence, not entirely. It was her ability to blend into the background, to anticipate Mr. Wei's needs before he even voiced them, a skill honed through years of careful observation and a deep-seated understanding of the unspoken rules that governed their world. The thought of the reception filled her with a sense of dread. It meant another layer of deception, another performance for an audience that expected her to play a role she no longer recognized. Her thoughts drifted to Guan Yuking, Captain Guan, whose stories of soaring through the skies, a solitary figure against the vast expanse of blue, filled Jai with a strange longing. Yucking struggle to reconcile her passion for flying with the expectations of her family resonated deeply within Jai's own heart. The whispers of pilot and wife, career and family, these were the same whispers that haunted Jai's dreams. Returning home that evening, the familiar scent of jasmine rice and stir-fried vegetables did little to soothe her frayed nerves. The apartment, small but meticulously clean, felt like a gilded cage. Her husband, oblivious to the turmoil raging within her, greeted her with a perfunctory kiss on the cheek, his eyes already glued to the television screen. The unspoken expectation hung heavy in the air: dinner to be served, clothes to be laundered, a home to be maintained. The image of Liba flashed through her mind, a fleeting memory of a stolen smile, a shared joke, a spark of connection in a world that felt increasingly suffocating. She pushed the thought away, guilt and longing twisting in her gut. Her parents' impending visit loomed large, a constant reminder of the traditional values that bound her. Their concern, though genuine, felt like a weight around her neck. King Fong's financial troubles added another layer of complexity to the already tangled web of family obligations. She felt trapped, caught between the expectations of her family and the yearning for a life of her own making. The wrinkle in Mr. Wei's shirt, a seemingly insignificant detail, had become a symbol of the growing chasm between the life she was expected to live and the life she desperately craved. The night stretched ahead, long and filled with unanswered questions, a silent battle waged within the confines of her own heart. The faint scent of sandalwood clung to the air in Mr. Wei's office, a constant reminder of his position, his power. Jai placed the crisply dry-cleaned suit bag on the corner of his vast mahogany desk. Beside it, she carefully positioned a tissue-wrapped box. Her hand lingered for a moment, a tremor betraying the carefully constructed composure she maintained. "Your suit has been cleaned," she said, her voice even and professional. "I specially selected a shirt as a thank-you gift." Inside, her thoughts churned, a whirlwind of anxiety and a strange, bitter satisfaction. The suit had borne the brunt of a mishap, his fault entirely, but she, as always, had smoothed things over. This small act of service, this placating gesture, was another brick in the wall of her double life. He grunted an acknowledgement, his eyes already skimming a document, his mind miles away. The subtle click of the box being opened echoed in the quiet office. Jai watched, every muscle tense, as Mr. Wei unfolded the crisp tissue paper. A pale blue, high-quality cotton shirt was revealed. A frown creased his forehead. "The shirt is so wrinkled," he observed, his tone flat, devoid of any real annoyance. Jai felt a prickle of irritation. She'd meticulously chosen the shirt, ensuring the fabric and color complemented his complexion, ironed it with painstaking care before boxing it. It was perfect. Yet, here he was, focusing on a non-existent wrinkle, a phantom imperfection. "It's the way it's folded, sir," she managed, forcing a smile. "It will smooth out once it's hung." Her internal monologue was far less composed. "He doesn't even see it. He doesn't see the effort, the time, the tiny sacrifices I make to keep this machine running smoothly." She wondered, not for the first time, if Mrs. Wei faced similar battles, similar casual dismissals of her efforts. The unseen wife was a constant presence in the office, in Mr. Wei's life. The perfectly arranged orchids, the subtly changing decor, the carefully chosen gifts that appeared on his desk all bore her invisible signature. Jai found herself strangely envious and pitying of this woman she'd never met. A woman bound by invisible threads to this man, to a life Jai was desperately trying to escape. The double life was taking its toll. The new job, a clandestine venture she hadn't yet dared to confess to anyone, was a lifeline, a breath of fresh air in the stifling confines of her current existence. But it was also a constant source of stress, a tightrope walk between two worlds. She thought of Liba, her heart giving a painful lurch. He represented freedom, a life beyond the confines of her parents' expectations and societal pressures. He didn't expect her to be the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect assistant. He saw her. But revealing her new job, revealing her ambitions, would unravel everything. The precarious balance she'd maintained would shatter. The thought of her parents' disappointment, their accusations of selfishness, was a weight on her chest. Their traditional values, their anxieties about her future, were a cage she both resented and understood. The irony was not lost on her. She was mirroring the very dynamics she so desperately wanted to escape. Mr. Wei's dismissal of the shirt mirrored her parents' potential dismissal of her new job. The same subtle power play, the same casual disregard for effort. She pushed the thought away, focusing on the tasks at hand. The upcoming business collaboration with Ponce loomed large, a complex tapestry of meetings, dinners, and a grand reception. The office buzzed with preparations, a flurry of emails, phone calls, and hushed discussions. Michelle, Linu, David, Tanji, Jay all were caught up in the whirlwind. It was during one such hushed discussion, between Mr. Wei and David, that she heard her name. "Jai can act as my female partner," Mr. Wei said, his voice carrying a strange note of finality. Jai froze, her hand hovering over the keyboard. Female partner? The phrase hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. She saw David's surprised glance, the flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. It was a role she hadn't anticipated, a role that would thrust her further into the spotlight, further into Mr. Wei's world. The whispers began almost immediately, spreading through the office like wildfire. Speculations, assumptions, and thinly veiled envy followed her every move. She felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. How would she explain this to her parents? To Guan Yuqing, the pilot whose life choices were a constant source of debate within their family? Yuqing's fierce independence, her refusal to conform to traditional expectations, was both inspiring and terrifying. Jai saw in her a reflection of her own desires, a path she longed to follow. But Yuqing's choices had also brought her a different kind of isolation, a distance from her family that Jai both envied and feared. The added pressure of King Fong's financial troubles further complicated matters. Her brother's constant requests for help, his inability to manage his own life, were a drain on her resources, both emotional and financial. She felt trapped, caught between her family's expectations and her own burgeoning desires. As she left Mr. Wei's office, the weight of her double life pressed down on her. The crisp efficiency of the office, the scent of sandalwood, felt suffocating. She longed for the anonymity of the crowd, the freedom of the streets, the chance to breathe without the weight of expectations. The image of Liba flashed in her mind, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. He wouldn't judge her ambitions, her need for independence. He would understand. But how could she bridge the gap between the life she was living and the life she yearned for? The question echoed in the silence of her heart, a silent scream against the gilded cage she found herself in. The insistent hum of the air conditioning did little to dispel the oppressive weight of the morning. Jai sat stiffly in her usual chair, the worn leather a familiar discomfort against her back. Mr. Wei's voice, a booming baritone, filled the room, each syllable punctuated by the tap of his pen against the mahogany desk. "Michelle, you'll oversee the catering. Linu, you're on guest list management. David, security." He paused, the silence stretching thin and taut like a wire about to snap. Jai's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Each assigned task felt like another brick in the wall closing her in. She'd accepted the new job, the one that promised escape, yet here she sat, trapped in the gilded cage of her current employment. The offer letter burned a virtual hole in her digital pocket, a constant reminder of the duplicity she was forced to maintain. Just a little longer, she chanted internally. Just until the Ponce deal is finalized. Tanji, you'll handle the press release. Mr. Wei's gaze swept across the room, finally landing on Jai. Her breath hitched. And Jai, he hesitated, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Don't ask me. Please don't ask me anything extra. Her silent plea went unanswered. You'll be my male partner for the reception. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Jai felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Female partner. The phrase echoed the antiquated societal expectations that clung to women like shadows. A decorative role. An accessory. Her stomach churned. This was exactly the kind of life she was trying to escape. The life her mother envisioned for her: a respectable position, a wealthy husband, dinners and receptions, a silent, smiling presence. But silence had never been Jai's forte, and the smile felt like a grimace threatening to crack her face. Michelle cleared her throat, a brittle sound that cut through the tension. Mr. Wei, wouldn't Mrs. Wei be more suitable? The unspoken question why Jai hung thick in the air. Mr. Wei waved a dismissive hand. My wife has prior engagements. Besides, he added, his tone softening slightly, almost apologetic, this collaboration with Ponzi is crucial. I need someone I can trust implicitly. Trust. The word resonated with a hollow ring in Jai's ears. He trusted her to manage his schedule, to filter his calls, to anticipate his every need. But did he trust her with her own ambitions? Did he even see them? Doubt gnawed at her. She swallowed the bitter taste of resentment and forced a tight smile. Of course, Mr. Wei. The meeting dissolved into a flurry of delegated tasks and hushed conversations. Jai's colleagues dispersed, leaving her alone with the echoing silence of the office and the suffocating weight of her double life. The Ark and Ponzi collaborative reception. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. It was a prestigious event, a stepping stone for Mr. Wei's ambitions. And she, Jai, was to be his ornament, his silent testament to success. The thought made her skin crawl. Back in the sterile confines of her small apartment, the city lights twinkled mockingly through the window. The aroma of leftover takeout clung to the air, a testament to another rushed, solitary meal. She kicked off her heels, the sharp click echoing the tension coiling in her chest. Her phone buzzed, a message from her mother. Have you spoken to Captain Guan recently? Such a fine young man. Jai sighed, the weight of familial expectations pressing down on her. Captain Guan. A pilot, respectable, stable. Everything her parents wanted for her. Everything she didn't want. The image of Liba flashed across her mind, a stark contrast to the stoic image of Captain Guan. Liba, with his unruly hair and mischievous grin, the artist who saw the fire in her soul, the man who encouraged her ambitions, not stifled them. The thought of him brought a fleeting smile to her lips, quickly replaced by a grimace of guilt. How could she entertain such dreams, such desires, when she was already drowning in obligations? Another message. This time from King Fong, her brother. Need a little help this month, sis. Just a small loan. The familiar pang of responsibility tightened her chest. Her brother's constant financial struggles were a recurring drain on her resources, a constant reminder of her duty to her family. She sank onto the sofa, the worn cushions offering little comfort. The apartment, once a haven, now felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating her with the weight of unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams. The new job, the one she'd fought so hard for, was meant to be her escape, her chance to break free from the suffocating expectations and forge her own path. But now, it felt like just another burden, another secret to keep, another layer of deception in the increasingly complex tapestry of her life. Mr. Wei's words echoed in her mind. Someone I can trust implicitly. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. He trusted her with his business, but he didn't know the real Jai, the woman who yearned for more than a decorative role in his life, the woman who dreamed of a life beyond the confines of societal expectations. The woman who was desperately trying to carve out a space for herself in a world that seemed determined to keep her in her place. The crisp white shirt, still carrying the faint scent of new fabric, felt cool against Jai's skin. She smoothed it down, acutely aware of the unfamiliar cut, the slightly more tailored fit than her usual office attire. It was Mr. Wei's, of course. He'd simply shrugged off his jacket and handed it to her, an almost careless gesture that nonetheless sent a ripple of unease through her. "It's just a shirt," she told herself, tucking it into the waistband of her skirt. "Just a temporary solution." But even as the thought formed, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind, a solution to what, exactly? Mr. Wei's request, so casually delivered, felt like another weight added to the already precarious balance of her life. "The reception is important, Jai. Ponzi's CEO is a stickler for appearances. We need to present a united front." He'd said it with that disarming smile of his, the one that made it impossible to refuse him, even when she was already stretched thin, juggling 2 jobs, a demanding husband, and the ever-present expectations of her family. She glanced at her reflection in the mirrored wall of Mr. Wei's office. The stark white shirt, against the dark fabric of her skirt, seemed to emphasize the exhaustion etched on her face. United front, she thought wryly. Her own internal front felt anything but united. A knock at the door broke her reverie. It was Linu, her face etched with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Ready for the grand unveiling, Jai?" she asked, her voice laced with a teasing lilt. Jai forced a smile, attempting to project an air of nonchalance. "Just a wardrobe malfunction," she said lightly, trying to dismiss the significance of the shirt. But Linu's knowing glance suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Mr. Wei's shirt, huh? Someone's in the boss's good graces." The comment, though playful, struck a nerve. Jai felt a flush creep up her neck. It wasn't about being in Mr. Wei's good graces. It was about survival, about keeping this charade going until she could finally admit to her husband that she had taken a second job. The secret gnawed at her, a constant source of anxiety that tightened her chest and shortened her breath. "It's just for the reception," she mumbled, averting her gaze. The rest of the team, Michelle, David, Tanji, Jay, and a few others she couldn't quite place, filed into the office, their chatter filling the space with a nervous energy. The upcoming merger with Ponzi hung heavy in the air, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The reception, ostensibly a celebratory event, felt more like a battlefield where first impressions would be crucial. As they left the office, a wave of dizziness washed over Jai. The weight of her deception, the pressure of her dual life, threatened to overwhelm her. She closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself to stay strong. "Just get through tonight," she told herself. "Just one more night." The car ride to the reception venue was a blur. Her husband, oblivious to the turmoil within her, chattered excitedly about his own work, his words washing over her like a meaningless stream of noise. She nodded occasionally, feigning interest, her mind a whirlwind of anxieties and half-formed plans. He'd asked her about her day, about the preparations for the reception, but she deflected his questions with vague answers, her heart pounding in her chest each time he probed too closely. The constant need to lie, to maintain the facade of normalcy, was exhausting. She longed to tell him the truth, to share the burden she carried, but fear held her back. Fear of his disappointment, fear of his disapproval, fear of the inevitable conflict it would ignite. As they pulled up to the grand entrance of the venue, her husband turned to her, a smile playing on his lips. "How does it look?" he asked, smoothing down the borrowed shirt. The simple question, so innocent on the surface, pierced through her carefully constructed defenses. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the demanding husband, but the man she had once loved, the man she had promised to share her life with. A wave of guilt washed over her, so intense it almost choked her. "It fits well," she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. "Very handsome." The words felt hollow, a betrayal of the truth that lay buried beneath the surface of their carefully constructed lives. The glittering lights of the reception hall beckoned, promising a night of forced smiles and empty conversations. Jai stepped out of the car, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the suffocating weight of her secrets. As she walked towards the entrance, arm in arm with her husband, she felt a profound sense of loneliness, a chilling premonition that the carefully constructed walls of her life were about to crumble. The whispers of the past, the anxieties of the present, and the uncertainties of the future converged, threatening to engulf her in a storm of her own making. The scent of stir-fried garlic and ginger clung to the air, a familiar, almost suffocating blanket draped over Mr. Wei's opulent home. Jai's reflection in the hallway mirror, a woman etched with exhaustion, stared back at her. Her tailored suit, still crisp from the day, felt like a costume, a disguise she wore to navigate the world of business. She thought of the heavy folder tucked in her bag, filled with documents not from Mr. Wei's office, but from the covert operation she'd launched, her new job. The weight of the secret settled in her stomach, a leaden ball of anxiety. He wouldn't understand, her husband. Not the gnawing need for something more, not the restless ambition that pulsed beneath her carefully constructed composure. The clatter of chopsticks against porcelain drew her into the dining room. He sat there, bathed in the warm glow of the overhead light, a picture of domesticity that felt increasingly foreign. Steam curled from the bowls of rice and the glistening vegetables. But the aroma, usually comforting, tonight only amplified the knot in her chest. He didn't look up as she entered, his silence heavier than any spoken accusation. It was always like this, the unspoken expectations hanging in the air, thicker than the Beijing smog. He expected her to slip back into the role of wife, to shed the day's professional skin and become the homemaker, the nurturer. But the woman who had stood beside Mr. Wei today, negotiating contracts and fielding calls, felt a universe away from the woman he expected to see. "You're late," he finally said, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. He was always economical with his words, letting the silences do the talking. "The reception at the Grand Hyatt ran longer than expected," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. Inside, a whirlwind of justifications swirled. She almost told him about the Ponzi delegation, the complexities of the merger, Mr. Wei's insistence on every detail being perfect. Almost. But the truth, the other truth, remained locked away, a dangerous secret she guarded fiercely. "Mr. Wei's wife wasn't there?" he asked, picking up a piece of bok choy with his chopsticks. The seemingly casual question was loaded, a subtle jab at her extended workday. "No," she replied, her hand tightening around her handbag. "She's visiting family in Shanghai." Her mind raced, replaying Mr. Wei's words from earlier that day, "Jai, you'll stand in for my wife at the reception. A pretty face is good for business, especially with the Ponzi representatives." The request had stung, reducing her to a decorative object. But she'd swallowed the resentment, plastered a smile on her face, and played the part. Because she needed this job, needed the experience, needed the stepping stone to something bigger, something beyond the stifling confines of this marriage. He pushed his bowl away, the clatter echoing in the sudden silence. "So, you played the happy couple with Mr. Wei, entertaining his business partners?" The words were laced with a bitterness she was all too familiar with. "It was a business function," she said, forcing calmness into her voice. "Nothing more." The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. She saw the flicker of disbelief in his eyes, the subtle tightening of his jaw. He knew. Not the specific details, but the underlying truth, that she was changing, evolving into someone he no longer recognized. "Don't think I don't see what's happening," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You're spending more time with Mr. Wei than you do with me." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. The sudden movement startled her. He towered over her, his shadow falling across her face. "You enjoy it, don't you? Playing the role of the successful businesswoman, the independent woman." The sarcasm dripped from his words, venomous and sharp. A wave of anger, hot and sudden, surged through her. "It's called having a career," she retorted, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Something you seem to have forgotten the meaning of." His eyes narrowed. "A career? Or something more?" The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell him about Liba, about the blossoming connection that offered a glimpse of a different life, a life where she wasn't defined by his expectations. But the words caught in her throat, choked by years of ingrained obedience. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't think I don't know you're hiding something, Jai." His words were a poisoned dart, striking at the heart of her carefully constructed facade. The fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the anger. He didn't know about the new job, not yet. But his suspicion, his innate distrust, was a constant, insidious presence in their marriage. "What am I hiding?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question felt heavy, laden with the weight of all the unspoken truths that festered between them. "You tell me," he challenged, his eyes boring into hers. She averted her gaze, unable to sustain the intensity of his stare. The folder in her bag seemed to pulsate with its own secret life, a tangible representation of the chasm that had opened between them. She had to tell him, she realized. Not about Liba, not yet. But about the job, the second job that consumed her evenings, the job that represented her desperate attempt to break free. She began, her voice catching in her throat. "I've taken on another project." The words felt small, insignificant against the backdrop of their unspoken resentments. "A project?" He scoffed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Is that what you call it?" She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable explosion. "It's a consulting position," she stammered, the lie twisting her insides. He laughed, a harsh, hollow sound that echoed in the stillness of the room. "A consulting position? While you're still working for Mr. Wei? When do you find the time, Jai? Or is that something else you're hiding from me?" The dam finally broke. The carefully constructed wall of composure crumbled under the weight of his accusations. "I make time," she snapped, her voice raw with emotion. "Because unlike you, I'm not afraid of hard work." The words tumbled out, a torrent of suppressed anger and resentment. "I'm tired of carrying this family, of pretending that your sporadic freelance work is enough. I'm tired of being the responsible one, the one who pays the bills, the one who takes care of everything." The silence that followed was deafening. He stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief. The truth, raw and exposed, hung in the air between them, a jagged shard of broken glass. The scent of ginger and garlic clung to the air, a familiar phantom of dinners past. Jai stared at the unwashed dishes piled in the sink, the oily residue clinging to the porcelain like a stubborn memory. Her reflection stared back, a woman etched with exhaustion, the faint fluorescent kitchen light highlighting the dark smudges beneath her eyes. "He expects me to do all this, after a full day at 2 full days, really." The thought remained unspoken, a bitter pill swallowed down with a sigh. He wouldn't understand. He couldn't. Not with his ingrained belief that a woman's place was here. Surrounded by the detritus of domesticity. "Still haven't touched those." His voice, flat and devoid of inflection, sliced through the quiet hum of the refrigerator. He stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the dim hallway light, his presence a weight pressing down on her already frayed nerves. "I'll get to them," she replied, her voice tighter than she intended. The lie hung heavy in the air, as thick and cloying as the ginger scent. How long could she keep this up? Juggling 2 jobs, 2 lives, all while pretending everything was normal. The charade was already beginning to crack. He stepped into the kitchen, the linoleum cold beneath his bare feet. The sound, a soft, percussive slap, grated on her nerves. Every small noise, every mundane action, seemed amplified, a symphony of domestic discord playing out in the confines of their small kitchen. "Tomorrow's another day," he said, the words carrying a familiar undercurrent of accusation. Another day for her to fail to meet his expectations, another day for him to remind her of her shortcomings. "No, it's not just another day," she countered, turning to face him. The words tumbled out before she could stop them, fueled by a sudden surge of defiance. "I've officially started working now." He blinked, his expression momentarily unguarded. A flicker of confusion, quickly replaced by a mask of disbelief. "Working? Where?" A knot tightened in her stomach. The carefully constructed walls she had built around her secret began to crumble. She had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her head, each time the words catching in her throat. At Ponce, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. The name, the symbol of her newfound independence, hung in the air between them, a fragile butterfly caught in a spiderweb. Silence descended, broken only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the clock on the wall, each tick a hammer blow against her fragile resolve. He stared at her, his eyes narrowed, searching her face for a sign of deception. "Ponce," he repeated, the word laced with suspicion. "Why didn't you tell me?" She averted her gaze, focusing on the chipped ceramic tile by the sink. The imperfections in the glaze, the tiny cracks and fissures, mirrored the fractured state of their marriage. I didn't want to worry you," she lied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. He scoffed, a short, sharp sound that cut through her like a knife. "Worry me? Or did you just not want me to stop you?" A wave of anger washed over her, hot and prickly. "Stop her?" He acted as if she were a child, needing his permission to breathe. "It's my life," she retorted, her voice trembling with suppressed fury. "And what about our life?" he countered, his voice rising. "Who's going to take care of the chores? The cooking? Me?" The familiar refrain, a constant echo in their marriage, ignited a spark of resentment that had been smoldering for years. "Why is it always me?" she demanded, her voice cracking. "Why is it always my responsibility?" He stared at her, his face a mask of incomprehension. "Because that's how it is," he said, as if the words explained everything. "That's how it's always been." His words, so simple, so devoid of understanding, were the final blow. They shattered the illusion of their shared life, revealing the chasm that had grown between them, a chasm carved out by unspoken resentments and unmet expectations. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, the fight draining out of her. "That's not how it has to be." She thought of Captain Guan, her words echoing in her mind, a testament to a different kind of life, a life where a woman could soar above the confines of domesticity. She thought of Liba, a flicker of hope in the darkness, a promise of a future free from the suffocating weight of tradition. And she thought of her parents, their anxieties and expectations, a constant pressure against her chest. The ginger scent, once comforting, now felt oppressive, a reminder of the life she was trying to escape. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not a partner, but a stranger, trapped in the same cage of societal expectations. This isn't working," she said, the words heavy with unspoken meaning. The dishes remained unwashed, a silent testament to the cracks in their carefully constructed facade. The silence stretched between them, heavy and pregnant with the unspoken words that threatened to shatter the fragile remnants of their life together. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the faint scent of ginger all amplified in the quiet, a soundtrack to the slow, agonizing unraveling of their marriage. The future stretched before her, uncertain and daunting, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile sense of anticipation for what lay ahead, beyond the confines of this kitchen, beyond the weight of his expectations. The scent of ginger and garlic clung to the air, a familiar testament to the evening meal already consumed. Jai sat on the edge of the plush sofa, the floral pattern a stark contrast to the unease churning within her. Her husband, Phong, clicked through channels on the television, the flickering light painting his face in a shifting mosaic of blue and gray. Outside, the city hummed its relentless nocturne, a counterpoint to the strained silence in the apartment. Jai picked at a loose thread on the cushion, the repetitive motion a small, physical manifestation of the anxiety coiled tight in her chest. She had spent the evening carefully constructing a facade of normalcy, a smile plastered on her face, her voice measured and calm, but beneath the surface, a torrent of apprehension raged. The interview, the possibility of a new beginning, the weight of the secret she carried it pressed on her like a physical burden. Phong finally settled on a news program, the anchor's voice droning on about economic forecasts. He leaned back, his sigh rustling the newspaper spread across his lap. "You've been busy lately," he remarked, his voice flat, devoid of any particular inflection. Yet, the words landed like stones in the stillness, each syllable a small tremor that threatened to shatter the fragile peace. Jai's hand froze on the cushion. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Busy? Is it that obvious? She thought, her mind racing. Had he seen her hurried departures, the late nights, the whispered phone calls? Had he pieced together the fragments of her carefully constructed lie? She forced a casual shrug, her voice lighter than she intended. "Just the usual workload, Phong. Mr. Wei has been particularly demanding with this Ponzi collaboration." He grunted, his eyes still glued to the television screen. "Even so, you didn't even iron my shirt before sending it to my office." The air thickened, the unspoken accusation hanging heavy between them. Jai's stomach clenched. The shirt. She had completely forgotten. In the whirlwind of juggling two jobs, the mundane details of domestic life had begun to slip through the cracks. The irony was bitter. She was striving for a better future, a life beyond the confines of these four walls, yet she couldn't even manage the simple task of ironing a shirt. She swallowed, the words catching in her throat. How do I explain this? She had rehearsed the lie 100 times, each iteration more convoluted than the last. But now, facing his impassive gaze, the carefully constructed narrative crumbled. "Phong," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a picture of them on their wedding day, their smiles bright and hopeful. How much had changed since then? How much had she changed? She took a deep breath, the scent of ginger still lingering in the air, a sharp reminder of the life she had built, the life she was now threatening to dismantle. I had an interview today." The words tumbled out, a confession whispered into the still evening air. Phong turned his head, his eyes finally meeting hers. The flickering light from the television danced across his features, revealing a flicker of surprise, perhaps even concern. Jai held her breath, bracing herself for the inevitable barrage of questions, the accusations, the disappointment. "An interview?" he repeated, his voice neutral, almost detached. "For what?" Jai's mind raced. She had meticulously planned this conversation, anticipating every possible reaction, every possible question. Yet, now, faced with the reality, the carefully crafted script deserted her. She could tell him the truth, the whole truth, about the demanding hours, the stifling routine, the yearning for something more. She could tell him about the exhilarating challenge of the new position, the thrill of using her skills, the promise of a future where she could finally be herself. But the words remained locked within her, trapped behind a wall of fear and ingrained societal expectations. The weight of her parents' hopes, their traditional values, pressed down on her, suffocating her. What would they think? What would society say? A woman abandoning her duties, neglecting her home, pursuing her own ambitions. It's a project management role, she finally managed, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. At a technology company. She omitted the name, the specifics, the true scope of the opportunity. It was a half-truth, a carefully crafted omission designed to soften the blow, to minimize the disruption. Foam remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on her face, his expression unreadable. Jai's heart pounded in her chest, each beat an agonizing echo of the uncertainty that stretched before her. She watched him, her mind a swirling vortex of apprehension and hope. He finally spoke, his voice low, almost a murmur. A technology company? That's quite a change. Jai nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She braced herself for the inevitable questions, the doubts, the disapproval. Yet, instead, he simply turned back to the television, the flickering light once again obscuring his features. The news anchor's voice droned on, a meaningless backdrop to the silent drama unfolding in the room. The scent of ginger hung heavy in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the life she had built, the life she was now poised to leave behind. The city hummed outside, a symphony of unknown futures, and in the quiet of her apartment, Jai felt the first tentative tremor of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this new beginning wouldn't shatter everything she held dear. Perhaps it would be the start of something even stronger, something more true. The future remained uncertain, shrouded in a veil of both fear and anticipation, but for the first time in a long time, Jai felt a flicker of excitement, a spark of anticipation ignite within her. The hum of the fluorescent lights in Mr. Wei's office was a constant, a dull thrum against the backdrop of ringing phones and hushed conversations. Jai felt the vibration against her palm as another message arrived. Her husband. Again. Dinner? It read. A prickle of irritation ran down her spine. Dinner. As if conjuring a meal was as simple as typing a single word. She'd spent the entire day juggling schedules, smoothing over a near-catastrophic catering mishap for Mr. Wei's reception, and simultaneously trying to keep her new job at Ponce a secret. She hadn't even had time to breathe, let alone plan a meal. A sigh escaped her lips, a small, almost imperceptible tremor. Later, she typed back, a curt reply mirroring the tightness in her chest. Mr. Wei's voice boomed from his office, cutting through the ambient noise. Jai, those reports. Her heart skipped a beat. The Ponce files were still open on her laptop, minimized but a glaring reminder of her duplicity. Coming, Mr. Wei, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The screen flashed as she quickly switched windows, the familiar spreadsheets a momentary reprieve. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, excelling at 2 jobs, yet failing at the one her husband seemed to value most, being a dutiful wife. The reception that evening was a blur of handshakes, forced smiles, and carefully crafted conversations. Mr. Wei, beaming, introduced her to potential investors as his partner. Not assistant. Partner. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. She could feel the curious glances, the subtle assessments. Jai forced a smile, her internal monologue a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Pride warred with anxiety. This was a step forward, a validation of her capabilities. Yet, the lie she was living, the precarious balance she was maintaining, threatened to shatter everything. Later, at home, the silence was even more deafening than Mr. Wei's booming pronouncements. Her husband sat at the table, a bowl of instant noodles steaming before him. The sight sent a wave of guilt washing over her. Sorry, she murmured, the word heavy with unspoken apologies. Long day. He didn't look up, the slurping of noodles punctuating the stillness. The unspoken accusations hung heavy in the air. She knew what he was thinking. A good wife would have dinner waiting. A good wife wouldn't be working late. A good wife. The litany played on repeat, a familiar soundtrack to their strained silences. Her phone buzzed again. Her father. How was the reception? He asked, his voice laced with a paternal concern that felt both comforting and suffocating. Good, Baba, she replied, forcing cheerfulness into her tone. Mr. Wei was pleased. She could almost hear his approving hum, the unspoken pride in his daughter's accomplishments. He wouldn't understand the complexities, the compromises she was making. Not yet. The next morning, the weight of her secrets pressed down on her. The conversation with Michelle at the office, ostensibly about the success of the reception, morphed into a veiled interrogation about Jai's partnership with Mr. Wei. The whispers and sideways glances intensified. Jai felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This charade couldn't last. The truth, like a festering wound, would eventually surface. She caught snippets of conversations throughout the day. Linu gossiping with David, Tanji whispering to Jay. Each hushed exchange felt like a pinprick, slowly deflating her carefully constructed facade. Even Captain Guan, a pilot she occasionally encountered at the office, seemed to be caught up in the speculation, her usual sharp, focused gaze replaced by a curious scrutiny. Heard you're moving up in the world, Guan Yuking had remarked, a knowing smirk playing on her lips. Marriage suits you. The words, meant to be light-hearted, struck a nerve. Marriage. The very institution that felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in a role she no longer recognized. A flicker of defiance sparked within her. She thought of Liba, a name that brought a warmth to her otherwise frigid existence. A future, perhaps, beyond the confines of expectation. A future where she defined her own success, her own happiness. The thought, though fleeting, was a lifeline in the turbulent waters of her current reality. The weight of family expectations pressed down on her further. A phone call from her mother brought news of her brother, King Fong's, latest financial woes. The familiar refrain of familial obligation tugged at her conscience. Her parents, steeped in traditional values, saw her success as a means to an end, a solution to their son's recurring problems. The unspoken expectation was clear, her duty was to her family, first and foremost. That evening, she finally confronted her husband. The words tumbled out, a torrent of suppressed emotions. The exhaustion, the resentment, the fear. His response was a stoic silence, punctuated by the clatter of chopsticks against his bowl. The distance between them felt vast, an unbridgeable chasm. In that moment, Jai knew. Something had to change. She couldn't continue to live this fractured existence, split between the expectations of her family, her husband, and her own burgeoning desires. The carefully constructed walls she had built around herself began to crumble, revealing the raw, vulnerable truth beneath. The future was uncertain, a terrifying expanse of unknown possibilities. But for the first time in a long time, Jai felt a flicker of hope, a fragile ember burning in the darkness. She would forge her own path, even if it meant walking alone. The antiseptic smell of the hospital clung to Jai's clothes, a stark contrast to the scent of Mr. Wei's expensive cologne that usually permeated her workday. Her father's hand, gnarled and spotted with age, gripped hers. He squeezed gently, a silent reassurance. He didn't understand. None of them did. Not even her mother, whose worried whispers followed her like a shadow. A stable job, Jai. That's all we want. But stability felt like a cage. A gilded one, perhaps, working for Mr. Wei, but a cage nonetheless. She thought of Liba, the fleeting smile he'd given her during their clandestine meeting. A smile that promised something more, something beyond the predictable rhythm of her life. The doctor emerged, his face etched with professional neutrality. "He's doing much better," he said, addressing her mother. "The medication is working. He should be discharged tomorrow." Relief washed over Jai, a brief respite from the constant thrum of anxiety. Her brother, King Fong, slouched against the wall, his face a mask of sullen indifference. He'd caused this, his reckless gambling, his constant need for bailouts. And yet, he wore the mantle of victimhood like a second skin. "Good," he muttered, not meeting anyone's eyes. Jai's phone buzzed, a message from Mr. Wei. "Reception preparations finalized. Your presence is required tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp." Her stomach clenched. The reception. She'd almost forgotten. He'd chosen her, of all people, to be his stand-in wife, his female partner, for the evening. Why? The question gnawed at her. The taxi ride home was a blur of neon lights and jostling crowds. The city felt suffocating, a concrete jungle mirroring the chaos in her mind. She needed air. Space. She thought of Guan Yuking, Captain Guan, a woman who defied expectations, soaring through the sky while the world tried to tether her to the ground. Jai envied her freedom, her ability to carve her own path. Stepping into her apartment, the familiar scent of jasmine tea and stale cigarette smoke assaulted her senses. Her husband, a man of routine and predictability, sat hunched over the television, a bowl of instant noodles perched precariously on his lap. He barely glanced up as she entered. "You're late," he grunted, his eyes glued to the flickering screen. "Dinner's cold." The words were a familiar refrain, a constant reminder of her perceived failings. She bit back the retort that rose in her throat. What was the point? He wouldn't understand the pressure she was under, the weight of 2 jobs, the suffocating expectations of family and society. "I was at the hospital," she said, her voice flat. "My father," he waved a dismissive hand. Yes, I know. But a man needs his dinner." The resentment simmered, a low burn beneath her skin. She thought of her new job, the challenging work, the intellectual stimulation. It was a world away from the drudgery of her current life. A secret world she clung to, a lifeline in the suffocating sea of obligations. The airport bustled with activity, a cacophony of announcements and hurried footsteps. Michelle, Mr. Wei's other assistant, paced nervously near the gate. "Mr. Wei is furious," she hissed, her voice tight with anxiety. "The Ponzi delegation is delayed. He blames the planning team." Jai's heart sank. The business merger with Ponzi was crucial for Mr. Wei, a stepping stone to greater power and influence. Any hiccup, no matter how small, was a personal affront. She watched Michelle fret, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen. Jai felt a pang of pity, a strange camaraderie. They were both caught in Mr. Wei's orbit, satellites revolving around a demanding sun. David, Linu, Tanji, and Jay, the other members of the planning team, huddled together, their faces grim. They were sacrificial lambs, ready to be offered up to appease Mr. Wei's wrath. Jai thought of her own precarious position, her double life, the lies she was weaving. One wrong move, one slip-up, and her carefully constructed facade would crumble. The Ponzi delegation finally arrived, their faces etched with weariness. Mr. Wei, despite his internal fury, greeted them with a practiced smile, his charm radiating outwards like a force field. Jai watched him, a study in controlled power. He was a master of the game, a man who knew how to manipulate and charm, how to get what he wanted. She wondered if he suspected her secret, if he saw the flicker of defiance in her eyes. Back in Mr. Wei's opulent office, the tension was palpable. He paced behind his mahogany desk, his voice a low growl as he addressed the planning team. Jai stood silently by the door, her mind racing. She needed to leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere, to prepare for the reception. but she couldn't risk drawing his attention. He finally dismissed them, his gaze lingering on Jai for a fraction of a second. "Jai," he said, his voice softening slightly. "A word." Her heart hammered against her ribs. He knew. He had to know. He gestured towards the plush leather chairs facing his desk. She sat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her mind a whirlwind of possible scenarios. "The reception is crucial," he began, his voice devoid of emotion. "Ponsi is sensitive. They need to be reassured." He paused, his eyes fixed on hers. "I trust you, Jai. You understand the importance of appearances." Relief washed over her, so potent it almost made her weak. He wasn't talking about her secret job. He was talking about the charade, the performance they were both expected to play. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, lay a diamond necklace, its facets catching the light. "Wear this," he said, his voice a command. "It's a gift. From my wife." The weight of the necklace felt heavy in her hand, a symbol of the gilded cage she inhabited. The irony wasn't lost on her. She, the woman juggling two jobs, struggling to maintain a semblance of control over her life, was being adorned with a symbol of wealth and status, a prop in Mr. Wei's elaborate play. As she left his office, the necklace cold against her skin, she thought of Liba, his smile, the promise of a different life. The weight of the diamond felt heavier than ever.